What's going on, guys? Marcus here, back in the shop. And first, before I start this review, I want to say thank you for pushing me over 200 subscribers. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are sticking with me, especially knowing that I'm in school and the content is starting to slow down because of tests, exams, and projects and all the other shit or whatever. And I'm sorry for the delay for this review. As you guys know, if you watched my last pickup for the documentary 2.5, this album right here, man, that glare kills me. I was in Texas. I was visiting my parents, as you guys saw. You might have seen my mom for like a second and a half in the beginning of the video. So I haven't seen my parents in like over maybe about a year or so. So I thought it was pretty cool, you know, to go surprise them for a weekend or so. And of course I couldn't drop the review, but I wanted to. So I do appreciate you guys waiting for this review. So here it is.
Something new. Stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop. Oh, no.
The documentary 2.5. Now, if we were to compare this album to 2.0, I know Game has said in the past, like, don't compare documentary 2 to documentary 1, but I don't think he ever said we couldn't compare the first two. If anything, he's got like a little competition going on Instagram where he just wants everyone to tag him to documentary 2 dressed in the clothes, in the colored clothes scheme that relates to the album. So of course, documentary 2.5 is blue, documentary 2.0 or just disc 1 or whatever is red. So you'll see people with red kicks posting up on Instagram or whatever, and just like red jumpsuits or blue shit or whatever on Instagram posting, and saying that that's their favorite out the two. Me personally, I'll get into that a little later, so don't let this blue fool you. It's another coincidence, just like in my first album review, how I was so happy to be wearing red. Now, with that being said, disc 2.5 I would say is a little more personal compared to disc 1, whereas which he goes more into details about the old beef between him and 50 Cent, the whole G-Unit record staff, label crew, and yeah. Now, me personally, I'm kind of over hearing Game going at 50. He's been doing it for 10 years. 50 is not hot musically. We all know that. He doesn't drop music like he used to back in the early 2000s. But when he does, he doesn't talk about other rappers. Like, 50 hasn't mentioned the Game in years. Like, if anything, he's more focused on, of course, businesses and stuff like that. But as far as beefs, his only beef that we know that's in the limelight is Rick Ross. I feel like 50 is not thinking about Game. And every time Game comes out with a project, he's always referencing 50 or G-Unit. And to me, it's starting to get a little kind of petty and a little old, honestly. So that's just how I personally feel. He started off the album telling the story about exactly what happened, how he was kicked off of G-Unit Records. So a lot of the guys that are my age, that are in their mid-20s and early 20s or whatever, who was around during when this beef escalated back in like 2004, 2005. We pretty much all know the story if you've been following it. So 50 hops on the radio, talks about how Game is not loyal because he's siding with his enemies being Fat Joe and the Lox, who at that time didn't even know they were enemies of 50 Cent. All they did was just hop on a track with Ja Rule, which in 50's eyes was, if you're gonna side with my enemy, then you're my enemy. You know, there's no in-between type of shit. So at that time, Game was like, yo, I grew up listening to Nas, Jadakiss, and the Lox. I grew up listening to Fat Joe. I have no personal beef with them. I don't even have a personal beef with Ja or Fat Joe or anything like that. I don't know these guys, but I grew up listening to their music, not Ja Rule, but the other guys that I mentioned. So he never really contributed to that beef. He might have dissed Ja Rule here and there, but he ain't no Ja. But again, Fat Joe and Jadakiss, they had been around since the 90s. So he grew up listening to them, so he's like, I'm not gonna side on that beef. Now, when 50 called went to that, that's where that old mentality of, okay, if you're not gonna ride with me against my enemies, that makes you my enemy. So that's where he kicked them off, you know, G-Unit Records. Game heard that on the radio, hopped in the cabs with all his boys or whatever, go to the record label to go confront him, and just hell breaks loose. So I've known the story for years. I'm sure guys around my age who've been listening to G-Unit and Game back when they first popped off know about this story, but I'm sure you kids who are new to hip-hop and are new to Game's music probably didn't know that. So I'm assuming that's why he put it out there. I really hope so, because again, if he's just saying it just, you know, get cool points, you're not getting any from me, man. I'm kind of over it. But again, if you are re-talking about it to just, I guess, remind the new listeners or just have them informed, then yeah, it is what it is. Now, as far as the album itself goes, I would say it's slightly more personal compared to the disc 1. And with that being said, I feel like this is more catered to the West Coast, whereas disc 1 is more just a variety of music with today's artists, even some West Coast artists like Kendrick and Cube or whatever. But disc 2 was straight for Cali. The beats from DJ Quick, DJ Mustard, and an appearance by that old radio personality, DJ Easy Dick or something like that, from the old Doggy Style album from '93. That the dude that was in Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style that was talking about this is Easy Dick at the Jack Off Hour, he made an appearance on the album. So you know this is a straight West Coast album. Maybe, honestly, I don't know if this album would have worked at the masses if Game just put this out as a solo project. It might have worked a lot better as a mixtape, but considering this is disc 2 with disc 1 that rode with it, it worked out. I don't know if it would have worked out completely if he just put that out on its own. So I will say that. Again, this album is a lot more personal compared to the first one, whereas which the first one, I believe he had a lot more fun with. You know, he had the features with Future, Drake, and Kanye, and it was just a lot more fun compared to what this one is. He goes more into the details of what gangbanging was like. He even goes into the actual history, like in the chronological order, not necessarily how the Crips was formed, but all the shit that happened like in the 70s, on how the Crips was like pretty much just fucking with the Bloods or the members who were non-Bloods yet, and how they rose to power and whatever. So I knew some of this stuff just from watching documentaries like in the past, but again, for new listeners to West Coast hip hop, this is kind of like an informative album or informative piece with different skits to pretty much let you know what these guys are going through in LA today and what they've been going through for years. Now, it's funny that this one is just so happens to be the blue album, whereas which the first one is the red album, because in this album you see that he gets harassed by, in the skits, he gets harassed by Crip members, and it's kind of funny because each time they do a little skit, they kind of get punked, which is kind of funny to me because it's just like, I felt like the purpose of making this album blue as to red was to kind of big up, you know, the opposing gang, you know, the Crips, to kind of big them up. And it just seems like in every skit they're in, just some dumb shit happens to them, or some wild shit happens to them. That was kind of funny to me. Now, one cool thing that I did like about this album was that they did a sequel to Like Father, Like Son, which if you have not seen my review for the documentary for the first one, I go into details about how Game is just super specific and detailed about the exact moment of his son being born, as far as name dropping the nurses, the doctors, and the actual times. So if you haven't watched that review, go check it out. Now, let's switch this one. Again, it's a part 2. So unlike the first one, he's not talking about the actual time his son was born. In fact, he actually throws his son on the track, and I'm not sure if his son Harlem wrote his own raps or whatever, but his son is rapping on the track. So I did like that. And if anything, it's slightly different because Busta has his own verse, whereas which the first one, he was just on the hook. So that's pretty cool to me, that he's, you know, relating back to the first album. It's not just a part 2 and it's his own thing. Like, he goes back and takes pieces from the first one. He even does that on disc 1. I know this album is just like the second one as far as having just a heavy list of features. The majority of guys on this album are actually from the West Coast, so I would say this one is definitely meant for the West Coast. I felt like disc 1 is an actual body of work for the everyday listener, not just people who listen to specifically West Coast music. They want to, you know, a mix of everything. So disc 1 is going to have some street hits. Of course, it's Game, so he's going to have that street music. Like, disc 1 is dope because I love the 90s themes that they have on this one, on disc 1. Whereas which disc 2, I don't really get a sense of 90s themes, but it's definitely a West Coast funky theme. Like, if you're not familiar with popping, like popping and locking, like all this right here and all that, like, they actually take these beats and like that West Coast funk, not the Dre funk or whatever. I'm talking about the actual, that boogaloo beat that if you've never seen like old B-boy and popping movies like what was that joint, like Breaking and Beat Street, where they had like that funky beat or whatever. I don't really know how to explain it, but if you've listened to certain 90s hip West Coast rappers, like Kid Frost. If you listen to their music back in the day, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. So we do get a mix of that with a mix of newer West Coast sounding music, like the flavor or whatever. Like we got the DJ Mustards, we got the YGs. So we do get a mix of that towards the end of the album, whereas post the middle of the album, we get, again, the old school, before the West Coast G-Funk Cali music, the real funky shit. Not the gangsta shit, but just the real poppin', all that shit. Like we get more of a sense of that. So if you were to ask me which one I like out of the two, I would probably say I think I like Disc 1 a little better. Not to say that I don't like Disc 2 at all. Disc 2 is dope, but I think Disc 1 is better as an overall album because it does have those 90s themes, which of course, you know, I love, but it also has a more blend of what music is today. So we got the joints with Future and Drake and Kanye, which is pretty much what music is now, you know, as far as like the production and like the actual style and the flow. It's going to that phase right now. So I just can't, I know I'm, you know, I love 90s music or whatever, but I can't get stuck in that field. So it's cool that I had like a little taste of that. But as far as like the whole album being like that, I probably wouldn't like it as much either. Now compared to Disc 2, I think Disc 2 is more towards, again, a West Coast audience. Like they're going to appreciate it a lot more, maybe the older generation, than Disc 1, because it's just a West Coast theme. Now, I'm not from the West Coast, but I love my West Coast music. I love hip hop from any parts of the country, so I'm not going to discriminate. But as a whole, I think I like the first one a lot better. Now, I'm surprised because I saw my boy TGR do his review and he said that he liked Disc 2, and I'm surprised he's a young dude. Like, I would think that he would like the first one a lot more because of, you know, the joints with Future and Kanye or whatever. They're the newer guys. They're, you know, what hip hop is going towards more, that field. Which again, the second one is more West Coast oriented with a couple of hits with a newer West Coast blend. But to me, I got a more of an old school Cali theme on the second disc. Not to say there's anything wrong with it. And then we do have some tracks with like Nas and Quan, which I haven't heard Quan in a minute, so it's kind of cool to hear him. I mean, those were just salt and peppered in, I feel like. I feel like the majority of the album was just meant for the West Coast. It's chock full of West Coast artists, which is nothing wrong with that, but I feel like that would have been better as a mixtape than an actual album itself. So I would give this album an 8 out of 10, a strong 8. Again, nothing wrong with the album. I love it. I mean, otherwise I would have shit on it and gave it like a 6 or something, but I liked it a lot. Now compared to the first one, I'm gonna just have to ride with the first one. I love the first one. That one I could listen to all day long. You know, I love Game because I feel like he, again, I stick by what I said as far as him being the best storyteller on the West Coast, and Disc 2 proves that because he tells you the origin of his gang banging lifestyle, of just bangers from the 70s and the stories between him and 50. I feel like he is the king of storytelling, so I'm gonna stand by that. But as far as an album goes, in 2015, I'm gonna have to ride with the first one. So that's pretty much it, guys. This might have been a little longer than what I want it to be, but I appreciate you guys watching me and I appreciate you guys commenting and let me know how you feel. So if you have not listened to this album, either this one or Disc 1, go out there, go make that purchase or download or whatever it is that you do. Go listen to Disc 1 and Disc 2 and let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you like Disc 1? Do you like Disc 2? Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share this video, and let me know what you think, and let me know if there's anything else you guys would like me to review. So I appreciate the 200 subscribes, appreciate the views, appreciate all the love, and that's it, guys. Till next time. So funny little story. If you've made it this far in the review, you know I shot it this morning, the documentary 2.5, and after the review, I took a shower and hopped in the car to get to class. So I have class in like 20 minutes, but the craziest shit happened on the way here. So I'm listening to the album and I get caught at a red light. And you know when you're driving for a little while, listening to music, you tend to zone out. So I got my windows cracked for a little bit because it's a little breezy outside. It feels a little nice. And I'm sitting there chewing my nails, like, you know, it's a bad habit. And I'm just minding my business, kind of zoning out, just thinking about the rest of the day. And as I'm doing that, the fucking sex skit, you know what I'm talking about, if you listen to the album, the sex skit, that just so happens to be on while I'm at the red light. Mind you, I have the windows cracked, so I'm not even thinking about that. And all you hear is the moaning, the chick moaning, and Game doing his, you know, getting his shit on or whatever. And I just so happened to look over to my left, and there's a little old lady giving me the craziest look, like because it's staring at me, and I was like, "What's she looking at?" I look, and then it just dawns on me like, "Oh my God, I'm playing the sex skit joint with the windows down, and the music is blasting, and this lady can obviously hear me." This was the craziest thing ever. I know it has nothing to do with the review. I just thought it was a funny story. Thought I'd share it with you. So if you made it this far in the review, thanks, and don't forget to like it, subscribe, and share it if you enjoyed the review. I don't know why I shared it. I just thought it was really funny. It has nothing to do with the review at all, but because it's related to the album, thought I'd throw it in there. And it literally just happened right now. So I'm going to class now, and I have like 20 minutes, so I'll probably do a little editing, and the video should be out tonight. Till next time, guys, Marcus at the shop.